There comes a moment in every man's life when he stops and looks at the road behind him, wondering if every step was worth the weight he carried. For Baba Jani, that moment came on an ordinary evening, when the world felt painfully quiet and almost too heavy to hold. He had once believed that life was a straight road, clear, predictable, obedient to his will. In his youth, he planned every turn, every dream, every tomorrow with the certainty of a man who thought time would wait. But as the years unfolded, he learned that life doesn't walk in a line. It circles, it bends, it slows down when you want to run, and speeds up when you wish to rest. Each twist had taken something from him. A dream, a person, a season he never got back. Yet in every loss, there was a lesson that waited patiently for him to notice. On that evening, as the light faded and the streets whispered with the voices of strangers, Baba Jani walked slowly, hands behind his back, tracing old memories like they were landmarks. The same road he had crossed 1,000 times now looked different. The walls seemed older, the air softer, as if everything around him had grown weary with him. He realized that life's weight doesn't come from what you carry, but from what you never let go of. The regrets, the words left unsaid, the people you still love in silence. When he reached the small tea stall at the corner, the one that had witnessed countless chapters of his story, the shopkeeper greeted him warmly. "Still walking the same road, Baba Jani?" he said with a smile. The old man returned the smile, eyes tired but kind. "Every day is a journey," he replied, "only the destinations change." In that simple answer lived a lifetime of wisdom. That moving forward doesn't always mean leaving things behind. Sometimes it means learning to walk with them peacefully. As he sipped his tea, the taste carried memories, laughter, heartbreak, and the echo of dreams that never found their shape. He understood now that the purpose of the road was never to lead him somewhere far. It was to bring him back to himself. Every failure had softened him, every wound had taught him patience, and every goodbye had made him gentler. When the sun began to set, a faint golden light touched his face. He took a deep breath, and for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel lost. He didn't need to rush toward a destination anymore. The road, with all its turns, had been his teacher all along. He smiled faintly and whispered to himself, "Maybe this time, I'm not walking to remember, I'm walking to begin again." And as the shadows stretched across the street, Baba Jani kept moving, calm and unhurried. The world around him changed, but within him, a quiet peace had finally found its home. The nights had become longer than they used to be. Silence was no longer peaceful. It had grown heavy, pressing against every thought Baba Jani tried to hide. He would sit near the small lamp in his room, its dim yellow light flickering against the walls, and stare at the paper before him. Once he could fill pages without effort. Words would flow like a river, carrying his feelings gently across the page. But now the river was dry. The pen felt heavier than it should, and his thoughts kept circling back to one question. Was it too late to start again? There was a time when Baba Jani believed that new beginnings were for the young. He thought that dreams had an age limit, that once you've been broken a certain number of times, life quietly closes its doors. Yet, something inside him refused to stay silent. It wasn't a loud voice or a sudden burst of inspiration. It was a whisper, fragile but persistent. "Begin anyway," it said, "even if your hands shake, even if no one sees it, even if you don't know where it will lead. Begin." One night, after sitting in the stillness for hours, he picked up his pen. The sound of it touching the paper felt like a heartbeat, returning after years of silence. The words came slowly, unevenly, but they came. At first, they were only fragments, pieces of old memories, half-finished thoughts, apologies he never said aloud. But with every line, he felt something inside him begin to heal. The room didn't look any brighter, yet everything felt lighter. As he continued to write, he realized that creation is not about perfection. It's about permission. Permission to be imperfect, to be lost, to try again even when the world has already moved on. Baba Jani's writing wasn't meant for an audience. It was a conversation between his heart and his soul. An act of remembering who he truly was before life made him afraid to feel deeply. Every night he returned to that same lamp. It became a ritual. Tea in one hand, pen in the other. Silence as his companion. The words began to form small stories, not of grand adventures or victories, but of quiet resilience, of people who learned to live even when the world forgot their names. Somewhere between those lines, Baba Jani found his reflection, softer, wiser, and more forgiving than the man he used to be. Time passed, but the ache that once filled his nights began to fade. He no longer waited for the perfect day to begin again, because he understood that every sunrise is a second chance. His loneliness turned into solitude, and his pain turned into purpose. That faint whisper inside him, the one that told him to begin anyway, had not lied. It was right all along. Healing doesn't start when everything is perfect. It starts the moment you choose to lift the pen, even when your hands still tremble. The morning was quiet, the kind of stillness that feels almost sacred. Baba Jani stood before a small group of people, most of them younger than him, their eyes filled with curiosity and fatigue, the same kind of tiredness he once carried. He didn't plan to give a speech that day, he had only come to listen. But when someone asked him how he managed to keep going after everything he had lost, he paused for a long time and then began to speak. Not as a teacher, but as a man who had simply lived. He started softly, his voice low but steady. "You don't heal by forgetting," he said. "You heal by remembering differently." The room went silent. He spoke about his failures, not as regrets, but as reminders that even broken paths can lead somewhere meaningful. He told them how there were days he wanted to stop, days when even breathing felt like work, but somehow he showed up anyway. That act, showing up even when you don't believe in yourself, became his quiet rebellion against despair. As he spoke, Baba Jani could see recognition in their faces. They weren't looking for grand advice or poetic answers. They just wanted to know that it was okay to fall apart sometimes and still keep going. He told them that the world doesn't always reward kindness or patience, but it changes you in ways that matter more deeply than success ever could. "When you fall," he said, "don't ask why it happened. Ask what it came to teach you." The air in the room grew warmer. Some of the listeners wiped silent tears, while others stared at him as if hearing their own pain spoken aloud. Baba Jani wasn't trying to inspire them, he was trying to tell the truth. The truth that strength isn't loud or proud, it's quiet. It's waking up on a day when you'd rather disappear and still brushing your hair, still making tea, still smiling at a stranger because you remember how much it meant when someone smiled at you. He told them that the secret to peace isn't about fixing everything, it's about holding what hurts without letting it define you. The heart, he said, is not made to stay unbroken. It's made to learn how to love again, even after being shattered. There was a pause, a deep silence that felt like prayer. When he finished in speaking, Baba Jani looked around the room. The faces in front of him had changed. Softer, more alive. For the first time in years, he felt the warmth of connection, the kind that doesn't need applause or attention. It was enough to know that his pain had found purpose. As the group thanked him, Baba Jani simply smiled and said, "Remember, you don't need to be ready to start healing. You just need to be willing." And in that simple truth, every person in the room carried home a small piece of his light. A light that had once been born in the darkest nights. Time moved quietly, like the slow rhythm of an old clock in the corner of Baba Jani's room. The days had turned into months, and the once lonely man who doubted his own worth had now become a quiet source of comfort for others. It didn't happen suddenly. It was a gentle unfolding, like dawn sneaking across the horizon. The people he had spoken to, guided or simply listened to, were beginning to find their own light, and without even realizing it, Baba Jani had become the reflection of the peace he once went searching for. He had spent years chasing happiness in distant places, in success, in people, in memories that no longer existed. But the more he searched, the farther it drifted. It was only when he stopped trying to change the world and began nurturing the small circle around him that he found what he had been missing. His home, once filled with silence, now echoed with laughter from visitors who came seeking a moment of calm. His evenings, once spent in loneliness, were now filled with soft conversations over tea and the comforting sound of shared stories. One day, as he sat in his courtyard, surrounded by blooming jasmine, a young man he had mentored said to him, "Baba Jani, you changed my life." He smiled gently, shaking his head. "I didn't change your life, Beta," he said. "I just reminded you that you had the power to do it yourself." That was the essence of his wisdom. Not to lead, but to light the way quietly and let others walk their own path. As the days passed, Baba Jani began to notice the subtle beauty in ordinary moments. The way sunlight danced through the leaves, the way rain whispered against the windows, the way gratitude felt like a soft heartbeat inside him. He understood now that peace was never about perfection or achievement. It was about acceptance. The world didn't have to change for him to feel whole. He only had to open his heart to what was already here. People began calling him the calm in the storm, not because he was untouched by pain, but because he had learned how to breathe through it. Whenever someone came to him broken, he didn't offer solutions. He offered presence. He listened, really listened, until their own words began to heal them. That was his gift, a stillness that reminded others to slow down, to feel, to forgive themselves. One evening, as the sun dipped below the trees, he looked around at the faces that had once come to him for guidance. They were laughing now, sharing dreams, standing stronger than before. A quiet smile formed on his face, not of pride, but of peace. He realized that his purpose was never to shine alone. It was to help others find their light. As the golden sky turned to dusk, Baba Jani closed his eyes and whispered, "Maybe this is what home feels like. Not a place, but a peace you help others carry within them." And in that moment, the circle of his life felt beautifully complete.